it's Ian with Pro Cycle Repair. Just wanted to show you guys a new bike we just got.
So somebody brought us a 1976 Kawasaki KZ650, and these bikes started in 1976, so this is the very first one of its year, and they made them until 1983. Now this person, they made it into a cafe style, pretty common with these bikes. It's inline four, it's got 64 horsepower. They went 126 miles an hour. I think it's pretty cool, they did a good job. I like this style seat. I'm not always a huge fan of doing the LED strips like this, but you know, it still looks kind of cool. And they got the knobbies on there. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you guys seen the movie, but the Jurassic World movie, where Chris Pratt, I think he rode something really similar to this kind of style with this off-road kind of tires to it. It looks cool. I like it. I like the bronze color to it. But so the reason they brought this bike to me is because, you know, first things first, it's a new bike they got, and it hadn't been running for like 5 to 6 years. So what they did is they put new gas in it, they ran seafoam through it, and they've had rider experience, and they were concerned because they just feel like it isn't running on all cylinders, or it just didn't have, you know, the proper power it should. So I started it up, I rode it, did a little diagnosing. So the first thing I want to do is make sure it is actually running on all cylinders. So I took a temp gun to the exhaust pipes, and these two are running at about 320 degrees Fahrenheit. This one was doing about 395, this one was doing 405. So it just means that those two are running a little bit more lean than these two. But as far as riding, it ran great. The carbs are fairly dialed in. There's not much hesitation. The customer complained about there being a lot of slop in the throttle, and there was a little bit of slop. I just adjusted it with these top part of the cables, just tightening it up a little bit. But other than that, it runs great. One thing with these inline fours and being a 650 is you kind of have to wring its neck. I mean, you wouldn't think so with the inline four. You'd think it'd have a lot of torque right from the get-go, but with these bikes, you actually have to get it above, it likes being above like 4,000 RPM. 4,500 is like the sweet spot. And then, I mean, you can see it goes up to 9,000 RPM. They're really kind of like a two-stroke. They like being in the high revs. They respond a lot better. It has like that power band, kind of similar to a two-stroke. But it does run really well. And I was pretty impressed. So the only things I did notice was the customer requested that this get tightened, so I did that. As far as the carbs go, typically with a bike that has been sitting for 5 to 6 years, I'd recommend that we go through the carbs, clean the jets, and clean the carbs. But I don't know for how many of you are familiar with a 4 carburetor setup, but back in the day, what they do is dealerships had special vacuum gauges. So they actually had 4 gauges, and they were each hooked up to each carburetor. And what they would do is they'd sync up the butterfly valves. They'd make sure those synced up, and then what they would do is they go to the air and fuel ratios, and they would actually dial in the same vacuum pressure for each, and so they were all synced up. Those tools are super expensive, and honestly, for how well this bike is running, it really just wouldn't be worth it to adjust any of them. I am going to check for air leaks to make sure, you know, none of these clamps have air leaks anywhere on them. That will help it, that'll cause it to run badly and also make those cylinders more lean. Another thing that I noticed was there's lots of chain rattle in the timing chain. There's lots of slop in it, so I don't know if you guys will be able to see, but this piece right in here, that's a manual adjusting cam tensioner. So what we're gonna do is there's a bolt on the other side. We need to put it in top dead center, and we will loosen that bolt, and it pushes that tensioner out, and then we'll tighten that. I'll show you guys how to do that in a video. Also, the customer was complaining that they installed a new LED brake light on the rear, and I wanted to show you guys. So with any type of bike that doesn't already have LEDs on it, where it comes from the factory with LEDs require a lot less electricity. And when you install LEDs on a motorcycle, typically what I do personally is I'll put LEDs on the rear, LED turn signals, but I'll keep halogens on the front. And the reason being is because when you turn on your turn signal, that electricity has to go somewhere. And the halogens on the front pull just enough load that it will operate the rear LEDs. And when you don't do that, if you do all LEDs, sometimes either one, they won't work, or second, you'll blow the regulator because that electricity has to go somewhere. So one thing I always tell people is if you're gonna do LEDs, just do the rear or do the front, whatever you want, thinks looks better, but keep at least one set of halogens on it so it'll still, one, work, and also prolong the life of your regulator, your module for the turn signals. So that's it with this bike. I'm gonna show you guys how to do that tensioner and check for those air leaks, and other than that, it's a great bike. These bikes are awesome. There's not a ton of rattles. It's comfortable around the highway. Even though I'm not a huge fan of cafe style, I think this is perfectly comfortable to go on a 30-minute plus ride. All right, so first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna come on the side with the Kickstarter, the right side of the bike, and we're gonna pull this cover off right here. So you're gonna grab a Big Phillips, take those out. So, looks like somebody's already been in here recently. Looks like they put in the kind where it doesn't require points to operate. Yeah, I don't think I've seen this before, but I've seen it in other applications, but I just haven't seen it in this big of a bike. But we're not looking at points today. We're gonna look in this little hole right here. And if you can see that hand right at the top, the little arm coming inside there, we're gonna look for T and F on this little plate right behind this that moves. So we'll use the Kickstarter to spin it over, and we're gonna there's a little sliver stamped right next to the T. We're gonna line those two up right inside there. And so once those two are lined up, then we'll move on to the cam tensioner. So I'm gonna, timing chain. So I'm gonna do this right now really quick. And all right, so once you guys get that lined up, that bolt right in there on the timing chain tensioner, it has a lock nut on behind it. What you're gonna do is you're gonna loosen that lock nut, and you're going to loosen that bolt, and that tensioner is gonna tighten again, and then you're gonna tighten it and lock that lock nut, and that's it. That's how you tighten your timing chain. So I want to tell you guys, I didn't film it, but so after I tightened that, I rolled it over by hand a couple times with the Kickstarter, and then what I did is I started it up, and it made a weird noise, so I turned it off. It also had a little bit of chain slap in it, so what I did is I loosened that bolt again,
let it retension again, then I tighten it all up, start it up, and then that's what you're gonna hear in this next video of it sounding way better, not as much chain slap as there was.
Alright guys, so we tightened the timing chain. It sounds way better. There's not as much slop going around. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to check for leaks. We're going to use some starting fluid. And so these little things right here, little tabs, there's one on each of the rubber seals right there. We're going to spray around those, and if we hear the idle go up at all, then we know there's a leak. So we're going to spray those really quick. Okay, I don't hear anything. So the idle's changing on that middle carb. Means we possibly have a leak. The idle changed when we sprayed on that inside of the second one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys. So these little tabs, they pull off. So it could be leaking from the bottom. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna put, you know, those little tubes that go on the end of the starting fluid, and we're gonna kind of pinpoint, see where we can find it, and if we can, you can kind of tell inside there it's already got some goop on the top of it, which means that somebody was probably battling the same problem before us, and we might be able to touch up a little bit here and there and maybe make that go away. So I put the longer tube on the end of it and kind of started trying to pinpoint where that leak is. You can kind of tell already, I don't know if the camera will show it, but there's black stuff right on this piece of the metal, right where it goes into the cylinder. That's gasket sealer, and so you can tell probably someone was already battling that. But I kind of pinpointed it to this little tube cover I was telling you guys about earlier. On that inside one, it was that. I twisted and pushed up at the same time, and it seemed to have fixed that. So honestly, for how well this is running, we'll just leave it at that. If it was part of this part, I'd probably grab some gasket sealer and just try to put a little bit of it on the side or something. Other than that though, the customer was saying that there's a little bit of excess gas that was coming out of the carbs. I tightened up the float bowl, but other than that, I'm just gonna leave it how it is. It runs so good. It's a 70s bike. Honestly, it's gonna have its quirks, and I think this is in great running condition. So I'm gonna check the oil and top it off and it needs it. Other than that, call the customer up, say hey, it's all done. So I'm glad you guys got to see another piece of history. Remember guys, this is a 1976 Kawasaki KZ650, and that's another video for Pro Cycle Repair. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.